The opinions expressed on this show do not necessarily reflect those of Talk Radio AM 640.
10, 9, 8, 7,
Extreme radio for extreme times. This is A View from Space with the Spaceman on Talk Radio AM 640.
Extreme times, indeed. I'm the Spaceman. This is AVFS. I'd like to welcome you in right now if you're driving around, listening to AM 640. Welcome you in. Or maybe you're at work right now listening via the AM 640 app. I welcome you in too. Or if you're listening to me right now on Shaw Direct on Channel 865, I welcome you in. Or if you're listening to me on your 3 or 4G personal communication device via the Stream the World software, I welcome you in. Also now available free on Apple Music or the Radio Player Canada app. Or maybe you're what some still call the best seat in the house to check out A View from Space. Logged on to 640toronto.com, picking up the live audio streaming at that website. I welcome you in. Wherever you are in the world, I welcome you in. Well, here it is. I'll give it to you right now, the latest. At least 2 people confirmed dead, killed, multiple injured. London Bridge, Borough Market, Vauxhall under attack tonight. Started at 10 p.m. 10, of course, the number of law. The timing is impeccable. Thursday is the British election. More than 20 hurt. Second attack at nearby Borough Market, as well as the first attack on London Bridge. And now Metropolitan Police in London have confirmed a third incident in the Vauxhall area. They even tweeted, "You must run, hide, and tell." Terrified people are being running all over the place, some even seriously injured, as multiple casualties are confirmed by the British Transport Police. And eyewitnesses confirmed that several bodies are actually strewn on the ground right now. Up to 2 to 3 armed men still at large. They're still looking for them, armed with 12-inch long knives. Also, a bomb squad's reportedly arrived on the scene. That's at London Bridge right now as I speak to you tonight. So, this is a breaking story, of course. Can't be covered here in depth as I like to do here on AVFS on Talk Radio AM 640. But I was going to start off the show tonight with, there were 3 blockbuster events this past week, but now I have to add a 4th. All 3 of these attacks at Vauxhall, Borough Market, London Bridge, not the Westminster Bridge, but it's the second attack on a bridge that crosses the Thames in London. As you know, the first one, March 22, covered here last week in connection with the Manchester bombing. He had a knife too, a knife-wielding man. Yes, 4 events, but 3 I'm going to cover extensively tonight, in depth, each orchestrated by the Illuminati, who are our overlords in the 3rd dimensional plane we all live on, Earth. first one that I've already given you just a quick thumbnail sketch of course, the now being called terrorist attack in London at 3 places: Borough Market, London Bridge, and Vauxhall. The second story I wanted to speak to you about tonight is the U.S. pulling out of the climate change agreement. And number 3 now is the new brainwashing movie, Wonder Woman. And the 4th is the 50th anniversary of the now legendary band, the Beatles, that kick-started a revolution in all the lives of all baby boomers, changed our way of life, even changed the baby boomers' appearances, their ways that they acted, and their views on religion. Also, it swallowed up the Gen Xers, the generation that came after the baby boomers. This week was the 50th anniversary of the Beatles' best album, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Tonight, I'll touch them all on AVFS on Talk Radio AM 640. The first one, the chaos candidate who became the disruptive president, Donald J. Trump, has, earlier this week, done it again. True to form, that's his job. He's done what he's been put in office of the President of the United States of America to do, by the elite rich, not by voters. And that is to disrupt. This time, it's his move of making a statement about getting out of the Paris Agreement. The Paris Agreement, of course, the Paris Climate Accord, is an agreement with the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. It deals with greenhouse gas emissions, mitigation, adaptation, and finance, starting in the year 2020. Did you hear me there just now? In 2020. Because I believe 2020 is the key. The time in between. Nothing's happening now. I said, starting in the year 2020, America supposedly is pulling out of the Paris Climate Accord. That's a full 2.5 years away. It hasn't happened yet. It's talk. There's been no change. Things are still exactly the same as when that agreement came into being and signed by all those nations. The language of the agreement was renegotiated by representatives over and over again and finally agreed upon in Paris by 195 countries. And it was at the 21st conference of the parties of the UNFCCC in Paris, and adopted by consensus on December 12th of 2015. Now, as of June 2017, 195 countries signed that agreement. 148 have already ratified it. Trump's words this week? I'm back with those in just a minute on a View from Space on Talk Radio AM 640. This is View from Space, and I'm just getting started. I'm the Spaceman. It's Talk Radio AM 640. Communicate by email, space@640toronto.com or spaceman@640toronto.com. Thanks for the one that you've sent. They start rolling in way before the show even begins now. Let me give you a quick update on story number 1 I covered tonight, off and on. Police have now, in London, declared 2 incidences in the capital of London, on London Bridge, Borough Market, as acts of terrorism. On London Bridge, a van was actually driven, apparently deliberately, into pedestrians, a crowd of them, about 50 of them. 3 men get out. Reports of multiple stabbings with 12-inch long knives. A 3rd incident now, I just talked about. I love radio. It's so live, so immediate. You can bring it right away as soon as it happens. A 3rd incident that I mentioned at the beginning of this show in the first segment, a stabbing at Vauxhall, is now thought to be not connected. It's not yet known if there are very many fatalities. 2 have been cited, with many injured. As this story unfolds, I'll bring you what I can do here. The latest. All that I can handle tonight is, well, the first time ever a terrorist attack has taken place while AVFS was on live on AM 640. First time ever. Always been the Fridays or the Saturday mornings or the day after, the Sundays, and of course through the week, but never while I was on the air live. So the second story I want to talk about tonight is the chaos candidate, of course, who became the disruptive president, because that's what he is meant to do. Making a statement about getting out of the Paris Agreement, but they're in it until 2020. He said in the Rose Garden earlier this week, declaring America is out. He said, I'm willing to immediately work with Democratic leaders to either negotiate our way back into Paris under the terms that are fair to the United States and its workers, or to negotiate a new deal that protects our country and its taxpayers. So, if the obstructionists want to get together with me, let's make them non-obstructionists. We'll all sit down. We'll all get back into the deal. We'll make it a good deal. And we won't be closing up our factories, and we won't be losing our jobs. And we'll sit down with the Democrats and all the people that represent either the Paris Accord or something that we can do that's much better than the Paris Accord. I think the people of our country will be thrilled, and I think the people of the world will be thrilled. But until we do that, we're out of the agreement. And quote of Donald J. Trump, President of the United States, the disruptor president, earlier this week. He was speaking from the Rose Garden, announcing on Thursday that the States was formally withdrawing from the International Climate Change Accord reached in Paris in 2015. Now again, I reiterate, the withdrawal process of the Paris Accord by the United States of America will take more than 3 years. Now even Trump's daughter, Ivanka, and his son-in-law, one of the richest real estate conglomerate heads in all of the world, owns some of the most pricey real estate in New York City. Jared Kushner supposedly urged him not to withdraw from the agreement, along with so many other CEOs of major corporations who've already implored him to stay in the accord. Over a couple of dozen took out a huge ad on Friday and put it in the New York Times. But in reality, if you look at these CEOs of these major corporations who are part of the octopus, as I say, their tentacles stretching around the world, are globalists. They're the ones who say stay in. All CEOs of these multinationals have the best interests of their shareholders, their stockholders in mind. These companies will benefit from the higher costs that come with climate change. The only ones who don't benefit from the bill, the cost of this climate change hoax, is the people, the citizens of these 195 countries whose leaders have signed it. The taxpayer will be paying the exorbitant blackmail, which will be disguised as a bill for your carbon dioxide emissions. Isn't that ridiculous? But for citizens, the ordinary man and woman, it's a lose-lose situation. All you get while the corporations are making multi-billions of dollars on this new source of energy, all you and I get is a false idea that this fight to combat climate change, this evil climate change, will save the planet. That's all. That's your comfort. You're doing something good. This feel-good emotion you'll get, supposedly doing good, is a big lie. Climate change is a ruse. It's a hoax. Because no one mentions chemtrails to you, do they? The chemtrails they're up there tonight. Fresh ones coming in right now. 2 jets flying over top of this place where I broadcast. This show emanates from AFVS on Talk Radio AM 640 from Toronto, Canada. It's happening right now above me. It's done now daily. This is June. We've had 12-degree days for the past 4 months. Cold and wet. Because we're the exporters of the cold air down to the United States to prove that climate change exists. It creates all the extreme weather. Hot and cold mix. There's no incredible, wonderful science behind it. It's just basically hot and cold. And when they hit together, the colder it is and the hotter it is, the more violent it is. That's the job of chemtrails, to sell you on climate change. Look, these countries that have signed up for it, that have been bullied into signing up for it, do your fair share for the globe. All thinking is one. It's just one more great big bill for countries to pay but can't afford it. Look, the Illuminati, the elite rich, want to crash this old system. They're after the American dollar. They're going to take it down. And with it comes all the other currencies. They want to get rid of politics completely, too. They want a monarchy. Actually, they want a dictatorship. They will never leave it up to the voter to pick who leads us. Are you kidding me? Who? What? You just fell off the turnip truck? They never leave it up to voters to pick who leads. They want their coming Antichrist to lead this new system I call corporate fascism. That is a system government marked by centralization of authority under one dictator. A fascist economy subject to stringent controls by a global corporate fascist leader. Let me tell you how they've got Donald Trump, the disruptor president, upsetting NATO. NATO has got 28 countries, mostly European countries, along with America in there. But those countries, not like America, they don't have the President of the United States just calling the shot. No, they have 27 other leaders that have to agree on what NATO does. They want to change that so there isn't 27 leaders, there's one leader for NATO if America pulls out. That's what Donald Trump's disruption is at NATO. Centralize the orders being given. They want to get rid of politicians. The Illuminati are sabotaging this old system themselves, insisting, in fact, it isn't working anymore, because they're not letting it work anymore. Donald Trump, the disruptive president, is to embody all the ideas of the average person, the little guy. What he wants and believes, the Christians in America, because they're pitting the Christians against Islam for World War III. As an ideological war. Who's God will be the big question. If you don't have the right answer, you're shot dead. The disruptive president is to embody all of those ideas of the little guy. He's purposely been chosen to do this, to fail, in order to show the world that protectionism, the little guy, the average person's idea, won't fly, doesn't work. Getting a better deal than your neighboring country is not the way to go. Keep what you've got is what we've got now. Protectionism is what Trump is trumpeting. Well, to compete to win is just not in the cards for this planet's future, says the Illuminati, your overlords. You must all become one. No winners, no losers. All one. Just like in the modern-day school system activities set up now. It mirrors this very idea, and they're teaching it to the young ones coming up. Brainwashing them, not teaching. The message is, we're all inclusive. There's no first place, there's no second place, there's no third place anymore. We're all just expected to participate. Just like in the coming New World Order, Trump's job is to embody the so-called people's beliefs and wants and desires, and to show that it won't work. It will fail to the world. And that's what Donald Trump is going to do. Fail. You think one man is going to pull out of the Paris Accord? No, it has to go through the Senate. There has to be a vote. It's not coming for another 3 years. 2020. It's another Olympiad. Or will there be? Will it be canceled for the Third World War? Like, historically, it was in Japan when they canceled the Second World War Olympiad. There's another one coming up that Japan hosts in 2020. Yes, you see, the Illuminati are going to do what they have always done, and that is to set up an empire, then destroy it, then replace it with another, because they're already in on the ground floor on the next empire, the new one. And that's what they're doing today. They're the ones that are building this new empire behind the scenes right now. All you have to do is look back in history, but then, who does that anymore? I say what another very fine gentleman once said: if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it. Spaceman, Talk Radio, AM 640. More next on AVFS. I'm the guy to call the Spaceman. It's Talk Radio, AM 640. Emails to space@640toronto.com or spaceman@640toronto.com. I communicate with you only by email. SM writes, hey, Space, I've been listening to your show for over 10 years. Did you know that Jared Kushner's office is located at 666 Fifth Avenue? Well, I've mentioned this a few times. They own that property, and as a matter of fact, it is known as the most expensive piece of real estate ever sold in New York City. 666 Fifth Avenue. So yes, but I thank you so much for that, SM. Now, as I said before the break, there is no climate change. It's chemtrails that give you the impression of climate change. It's an agenda driven and solely orchestrated by the elites. It's to be used as a catalyst to bring in the new system. So, let me conclude with this, with the Paris Accord and Trump. I don't believe for a moment that Donald Trump eventually pulls out of the U.S. or pulls the U.S. out of the Paris Accord, because it will take more than 3 years to complete. It's like an apparition. It's sort of like a fog. It's a mist. You can't really grasp it. It's not really there. It dissipates. It's gone. Just like Brexit. Is it all just talk to create fear? To create even greater profit and control for the elite rich? How often have you heard, well, Brexit's already built into this budget? The answer is yes. It's causing so much consternation. Ebb and flow, up and down. That's how the elite rich make billions of dollars in the stock market. Now look at Brexit. Just what if? What if talks break down? The UK can't reach a deal in the next 2 years. They've just got 2 years to complete it. The clock's ticking now. Just had another terrorist attack on London Bridge. Theresa May has her election coming up on Thursday. Oh, is this pot boiling or what? It's about ready to be eaten by the vampires, the Illuminati. You see, Britain needs to agree to the terms of its divorce from the EU under Article 50. As well as agreeing its future relationship with Europe, including trade relations. If they can't reach a deal, did you know that it would actually mean at least, just like the Trump thing in Paris Accord, 10 more years, a decade in court litigation, financial liabilities, fighting those. Actually, it's also possible that they could revert to the WTO, the World Trade Organization. More globalists in their trap. Well, Trump's talk, Brexit talk. So far, it's just talk, causing chaos in the markets. Fear and enmity between countries. Isn't that what the Illuminati have been doing all along to wreck this system? I've been reporting on it for years, but nothing has really physically changed yet. Only in people's minds, with the fear, the terrorist attacks, the pressure, the stress. It's all still the same. If you blow it all away, that apparition, that fog lifts. And apparently the Illuminati have felt that the Manchester bombing that happened just days ago is an old event that everybody's already forgetting about, so we better have one more before the British election on Thursday. Well, it happened tonight in London at two places, Borough Market and London Bridge. A carbon copy of what happened on March 22nd of this year, with a man in the vehicle running people down on Westminster Bridge and then wielding a knife. Two or three suspects are being tracked at this time, traced, trying to find out where they are by the London police. The bobbies are out in full force, you can believe it, tonight, armed to the teeth. And will the Manchester benefit concert tomorrow go on? You can bet it will. All the big Illuminati stars are there to promote the ritual child killing that happened. Yeah, it's all just talk. All these chaos things that are happening in the markets. But nothing's really physically changed. But there's all this turmoil, this fear, capitalized on by the vampires of this world, sucking the lifeblood out of all they touch. All in the name of profit, maximizing shareholder value. The great enemy of our overlords, our rulers of this world, our gods, is you and I. The Illuminati are setting the stage for the imminent arrival of one called the Antichrist, the one who supposedly possesses the purest of holy royal blood from a bloodline of descendants of the leaders of all those empires, stretching back millennia that the world has ever seen. Dates back all the way through time, including the bloodline of Jesus Christ, which brings me to the Illuminati event known as Wonder Woman. The third story I'd like to speak about tonight here on AVFS on Talk Radio AM 640. Wonder Woman movie's out this weekend. World history is chocked full of Antichrist figures. Not the Antichrist, but Antichrist figures. We're waiting for the one they call the one. Our books and children's bedtime stories are full of Antichrist figures, too. These Antichrist figures come in all shapes, all sizes, from all walks of life. They come in the form of religious leaders. They come in the form of politicians turned tyrants. They come in the form of myths and legends. There have been countless movies, countless comic books published with them in it, promoting it. Superheroes, as they're called. There's Batman and Robin, Batgirl, Spider-Man, Spider-Woman, Wonder Woman. There's even been a Wonder Man. There's Tarzan, Captain Marvel, Captain America, Captain Planet, Captain Universe, Flash, Gordon the Green Lantern. There's Atlas, Aquaman, and, of course, there's the one of whom all the names I've just mentioned that were created to emulate, to copy. The one whom all the superheroes are modeled after. The one I'm alluding to is, of course, the template, Zeus. Yes, the mighty Greek god of Grecian myth. Zeus was the All-Father, the chief of the gods, the sky and thunder god in ancient Greek religion. Mythology, who ruled as king of the gods of Mount Olympus. This is the bloodline I think I spoke about moments ago. His name, Zeus, has the same linguistic derivation with the most supreme god in the Roman myths. In Roman mythology, Zeus was known as Jupiter. His mythology and powers are similar, though not identical, to the Indo-European deities of Indra, Jupiter, Perun, Thor, and Odin. It's Lucifer, the Illuminati center of worship. Lucifer, the bringer of light. A religion is called Luciferianism. We've just been through the vernal equinox, being the spring equinox where the Illuminati celebrates the woman taking over control of the world, or her half of the year. The first half of the year is controlled by the woman, as seen in goddess worship, in the media, pointed out tonight for you, with Wonder Woman, and the men once again become dominant for the last half of the year. In the fall. This is all a simple reflection, of the ancient Greek myth that tells of Persephone, the beautiful daughter of Zeus and Demeter. Wonder Woman's next on Talk Radio AM 640. It's the Spaceman. More next. I'm the guy that calls Spaceman. It's Talk Radio AM 640. Emails to spaceman at 640toronto.com or space at 640toronto.com. Thanks for yours. So in the movie theaters this weekend, strange, isn't it, right after the vernal equinox, spring equinox, Wonder Woman hits the movie screens worldwide. Israeli actor Gal Gadot plays Wonder Woman. Now, the city of Austin, Texas, has a theater chain, and their screening of Wonder Woman has caused quite a stir down there in Texas, since it was announced last week that no guys allowed. Read the announcement, which reserved the screening for, I believe, 5 showings for people who identify as women only. The movie theater the movie chain Alamo Drafthouse, after announced earlier this week that it would host women-only screenings of this new Wonder Woman flick. Their statement went this way: "Apologies, gentlemen, but we're embracing our girl power and saying no guys allowed for one special night at the Alamo Ritz." That's just one of the theaters the chain owns. And when we say people who identify as women only, we mean it. Everyone working at this screening, the movie chain announced, venue staff, projectionist, culinary team, will all be female. Of course, the theaters responded to a mixture of backlash and support, of course, through several statements. And of all places, Texas. You talk about redneck country. Now, before I begin about the movie, Wonder Woman, the woman who has been chosen over Beyonce, I'm told, to play the lead role is a Jewish woman, Gal Gadot. Yeah, we almost had a black Wonder Woman. Beyonce almost got the part. The Jewish ancestry of Gal Gadot provoked all theaters in Lebanon this week, earlier, where it opened, to ban the movie in that country. So it didn't even actually open. Scheduled to, but didn't. They waited because they knew, of course, there was a Jewish woman playing the lead role before it hit the stands that the movie would not be shown. More chaos, more division caused here by the Illuminati. Women's equality used this time, drumming it into everyone's brain to the point of submission. At least on a personal level. You know, for the little person, the average guy, the average lady, although corporately they don't practice what they preach of this women's equality. I mean, corporations have not put women at par with men, as you well know. It's not, as the corporations like to say under their breath when you're not paying attention, don't do as I do, do as I say. Why choose an Israeli woman, though? You might wonder. Why? The Wonder Woman role played by Gal Gadot, for a reason she was picked. Remember, all-inclusive? Well, this includes women as soldiers in the coming conflagration also. Oh yes, fighters in the coming global war, World War III, will be women on the front lines. Israel was the 21st country to use women as soldiers in modern times. There are many women in the Israeli Defense Forces. Israel is one of only a very few handful of countries that do this today. And they've enlisted the most women. That's why a Jewish woman actually plays the lead role of this woman warrior, this super warrior known as Wonder Woman. Women in the Israeli Defense Forces are female soldiers who serve in the Israeli Defense Force. Israel is one of the only 3 countries now. There's Israel, Norway, and Eritrea, with a mandatory military service requirement for women. America's getting awful close. I'll get to that in a second. Women have taken part in Israel's military before and since the founding of the state in 1948, with women comprising 33% of all the IDF soldiers and 51% of its officers are female. Before the establishment of the State of Israel, women served in combat roles in the militias that would become the Israeli Defense Forces. The rate of women who took part in combat organizations stood at 20%. At the years before the establishment of the Israeli Defense Forces, military service for women existed in the lines of Shomer and Haganah organizations only. The Haganah stated in its law that its lines were open to every Jewish male or female who is prepared and trained to fulfill specialists and weaponeers. The obligation of national defense to serve as medics, communication specialists also. During World War II, approximately 4,000 females actually volunteered for service in the British assisting forces. One of them, Alice Hatzor Hirsch, was about 16 when she joined the Haganah. In 1942, she joined the British Army as a driver. We were more connected than the others, she recalls. Years later, a girl becoming a driver in the British Army was considered the height of boldness at that time. Yes, women in combat. Gal Gadot plays Wonder Woman as the first and foremost the wonderkind warrior of female gender. That's a sea change. Washing over everything. This absurd turnabout from a millennia before, when women were never even considered for combat duty. Instead, when war came, they simply had a minor switch in roles where they'd pick up the men's jobs on the home front. Oh, things like, taking over the production lines in factories, driving transit vehicles. Before, women had long been seen as stay-at-home mothers before World War II, and only that. They're the stereotypical, perfect American family. Had the father that brought home the bacon each day during the week, and the mother who raised the children at home and was the homemaker. The fact of the matter is, women always worked outside the house, but it just wasn't glorified as much. These women, though, were not middle class. They were the lower class or the minority and had to work to support their children if they wanted to live. And a lot of men didn't have the best attitude toward these low-class women that took these crappy jobs at the very beginning. A male could better suit their job, the men believed. During World War II, all of this changed, and a revolution in the workforce actually came about. Yes, constantly transforming the earth are the Illuminati. With World War II raging, using that as the catalyst to make these changes, out of chaos comes change. the number of women working outside the home rose exponentially, and as we've been a witness to in our lifetime, they're now here to stay, women in the workplace, permanently. Women also played a large role in the military, which had never been seen before. Gender roles had changed in the modern world. Just how much, you may wonder? Well, the answer is it's now a complete reversal of the past. Here's proof. I mentioned earlier in a segment about the United States, women in combat. A Senate Arms Services Committee hearing was held in February of last year, 2016, when a man still controls the Senate. Remember that? Man still controls the Senate, who made this decision, by the way. There's mostly men in the Senate, the U.S. Senate. They debated the subject of women in the military. Then, just 4 months later after the debate in February of last year, on a Tuesday, named after Tyr, or Tyr, the god of single combat victory and heroic glory in the Norse mythology, one of the Illuminati's go-to religions also, because it's all wrapped up in sun worship. Yes, Tuesday, where we get the name from, the god of single combat. So, 4 months after their debate, it was passed. The United States Senate approved a military policy bill that would require women to join men, not on the battlefield, but in registering for the military draft in America. Starting when? When was that? June 14th. They waited until after the spring equinox of last year and then passed the law. Last year, 2016, June 14th. Women are now legally bound to register for the military draft in America. It's a Spaceman. This is AVFS and Talk Radio AM 640. I've got lots more straight ahead. I'm the Spaceman. This is Talk Radio AM 640. Emails to space640toronto.com or spaceman at 640toronto.com. And I thank you so much for the one that you've sent me. I really appreciate them. I really and honestly do. So I've been talking about Wonder Woman. I've also been talking about the Israeli female that's playing the role of Wonder Woman in this latest flick from this superhero we know as Wonder Woman. And of course it wouldn't come out in say December or the late fall, because it's man's turn to rule. No, it's all about the women in the first 6 months of the year, beginning with the spring equinox, which we have just gotten into and just got comfortable. And here comes the promotion for the woman. And it's really kicked off by Wonder Woman and Ariana Grande's Manchester bombing concert. And that's an ongoing story, because tomorrow, the benefit concert, they're all back in Manchester to put the big show on, to promote it all, saying they're healing the community. By the way, the people that were at the first show are to be allowed in free tomorrow. Madonna, the mentor of Ariana Grande's already been there. She was there for one of the Oasis's birthday parties, the 50th celebration of one of the brothers, I believe, the Gallaghers. Now, who will be at tomorrow's event, broadcast live on BBC, by the way. Now, back to the movie. And I was just talking about the military draft being started for all women 18 and over to have to register for the military draft in America. And that started June 14th, just after the spring equinox of last year, 2016. And tonight, there's this story released. Remember, woman is the ruler of the world for this 6 months. Just got going. A transgender man and a father of 2 adopted children happily announces he is what? Pregnant? With his gay husband. A year after suffering a miscarriage, we're told. News this week. Tonight, Tristan Rees, the transgender man, and Biff Chaplow, his husband, who are living in Portland, Oregon right now, exploded into the parenting scene a couple of years ago, actually, after the couple fought to adopt Chaplows. That's the male counterpart of this pair, this couple. Chaplow's niece and nephew were to be adopted by them, who were living in a traumatic home, we were told. Their journey through court hearings, custody battles, the legal system controlled by the Illuminati, was chronicled on the popular parenting podcast that's on the internet. And Tristan Rees and Biff Chaplow were dubbed the accidental gay parents. Now, after gaining custody of their son and their daughter, Rees and Chaplow plan to add a 3rd child to their family. Rees, who's a transgender man, is now pregnant. In a new episode of this podcast, Rees and Chaplow talked about their decision to have another baby, going through a miscarriage, finding out Rees was pregnant, telling their families, and how other people react to seeing a pregnant man. Yeah, great promotion, right? Well, that's what it's for. In order to get pregnant, Rees said, he had to stop taking testosterone, which meant that his periods started coming back for the first time in 10 years. But even after months of trying and carefully tracking his cycle, Rees wasn't pregnant. He and his husband, Chaplow, started to get discouraged. But while many cisgender women who are trying to get pregnant might feel the need to blame their body for failed attempts, Rees was finding another way to be much kinder to his body. By the way, if you don't know what a cisgender woman is, that's, someone has a baby in the hospital, a cisgender girl, say, and the baby pops out and it's a female, at least the sexual organs are. The doctor will hold it up and go, "It's a girl." There's your cisgender woman. Because you see, the name of the sex goes along with the genitals of the little human being. So that's what a cisgender woman is. So an ordinary average woman, cisgender woman, tries to get pregnant, might feel the need to blame their body for failed attempts because, maybe I'm just not fertile enough, or maybe my body is just too unstable. Well, Rees said he found a much kinder way to treat his body. He said one morning he woke up and he felt really, really bad, like he had a fever or something. So he randomly grabbed one of the tests that he had in the bathroom, and it came back positive. And he said to his counterpart, and it was like, "Oh my God, this is actually happening," he told him. said then that they were both anxious for their 6-week appointment. A 6-week appointment, by the way, when you're pregnant, that's when you get your first ultrasound. On the week of the appointment, he actually called the clinic, called ahead to make sure that his doctors were aware and prepared to treat a pregnant dad. Isn't that incredible? How about that? Transgender man, pregnant. Big headline. Oh, the timing, too, of this. Bill Cosby, man versus woman. Bill Cosby's trial begins when? Monday. Yeah. How all neatly this fits. The timing is just so well. Illuminati. Perfect. Yes. I gotta tell you. What's appearing in movie theaters all around the world this weekend? Wonder Woman. How perfect. Originally, Diana was the name of Wonder Woman, the daughter of Queen Hippolyta. Because I'm going to take you back to mythology. Yes, because that's where this comes from. Wonder Woman is merely a vehicle for the Illuminati's religion. So is transgender. Transforming the world with their changes. It's the Spaceman on Talk Radio AM 640. More next. It's the Spaceman on Talk Radio AM 640. Emails to space@640toronto.com or spaceman@640toronto.com. S.O. writes, Space, delighted to be listening to you tonight from the southern side of Lake Erie, here in Ontario, Canada. Now, he gives me a picture of London Bridge, the Tower Bridge, where there are two great towers joined by a cross span. You know, it's an iconic picture, famous around the world. You don't even have to check it out on the internet to make sure. You can see it in your own mind's eye. It forms an 11, and that's what he's on about. Furthering the theme of the number 11, my emailer writes, already doing my work for me, my research. The number of 11 turns up in these terrorist attacks, and what he's referring to, of course, is March 22nd was the Westminster Bridge attack, and then here May 22nd was the Manchester attack that had all 11s all through it. So he says, furthering this theme of the number 11 in these terrorist attacks, the design of Tower Bridge itself looks like an 11. So the timing of the incident at 10:10 p.m. gives us an 11, shape of the structure, and drop the zeros at 10:10 p.m. because they mean nothing, and you arrive at a double 11, just as you've been pointing out, he says. Thanks so much for that. You're already doing my research for me for possible next week's show. Anyway, back to tonight's show, the Wonder Woman. 4 stories I'm covering tonight. One on the fly, the London Bridge attack, terrorist attack now, as well as at Borough Market, also connected with that terror attack. But the third one that I originally opened the show with tonight in Vauxhall is now not related. So, back to Wonder Woman. Originally Diana, the daughter of Queen Hippolyta. As I said, I'm going back to ancient mythology because that's what this vehicle Wonder Woman is to do, is to brainwash us with the first child born on Paradise Island to Queen Hippolyta. In the 3,000-year history that the immortal Amazons who lived there inhabited, it's said that the Amazons had been created around 1200 BC when the Greek goddesses drew forth the souls of all women who had been murdered by men and placed them on the island of Letos. Guess what Letos does today? It's the home of where all of the refugees and migrants that come across from Syria go. That's where the refugee camp is. It's on the island of Letos. So have you been watching the camps and those people that are saved supposedly in the middle of the Mediterranean, migrating from the Middle East by way of Libya across the Mediterranean to Greece, staying at Letos? Well, that island, inhabited by the Amazons, where Wonder Woman is from, around 1200 BC, that's when the Greek goddesses drew forth all the souls of all women who had been murdered by men and put them on that island. One soul was held back from creation. That one would be born as Diana, as the daughter of Queen Hippolyta. That soul was a reincarnation of Hippolyta. In the late 20th century, Hippolyta was instructed to mold some clay from the shores of Paradise Island into the form of a baby girl. 6 members of the Greek pantheon of gods then bonded the soul to the clay, giving it life. Each of the 6 also granted Diana a gift. Demeter, great strength. Athena gave wisdom and courage. Artemis, a hunter's heart and a communion with animals. Aphrodite, the Greek goddess, gave her beauty and a loving heart. Hestia gave her sisterhood with fire. Hermes gave speed and the power of flight. So Diana grew up surrounded by a legion of sisters and mothers. When she was a young woman, the gods decreed that the Amazons must send an emissary into man's world. Queen Hippolyta ordered a contest to be held, but forbade Diana, her daughter, from participating. Diana disobeyed and did it anyway, in disguise, easily winning the contest and being named the Amazons' champion. She was given a uniform fashioned from the standard of someone who had visited the island a few decades earlier. Wonder Woman did not keep her identity a secret, and she was not at first a superheroine. Actually, her character was in many ways that of a babe in the woods, innocent and without guile. Diana spoke only Themyscian, a combination of classical Greek and Turkish languages. She had to learn English when she arrived in America, rather than knowing the language intuitively. Nonetheless, Diana was trained as a warrior and had no compunction against using deadly force when called upon. Diana often dealt with war, injustice, inequality, death, and conflicts involving the Olympian gods. Before beginning her mission to America, Diana was given the lasso of truth, forged by Hephaestus himself, a Greek god. She was also given the sandals of Hermes, which allowed her to instantly travel great distances in seconds. Superpower. Diana's mission was one of peace, but part of it initially involved defeating a mad plot by Ares to destroy the world. Diana ventured into the world by starting in Boston, Massachusetts, the United States of America, where she met a Harvard professor, Dr. Julia Capitellis, and her daughter, Vanessa, as well as the Air Force officers Steve Trevor and Etta Candy. Diana stayed with Julia and Vanessa, and over the course of a month or two, Diana learned to speak English. She was attacked in their home by Decay, one of Harry's minions, and after a battle that spilled out into the streets of Boston, she first came to the public's eye and was given the name Wonder Woman. So after discovering Harry's plan, one that involved creating a nuclear holocaust, by the way, Diana manages to foil it as Wonder Woman, battling through his sons Phobos and Deimos, before finally convincing him the error of his ways with the lasso. After defeating the god of war, Diana returned home for healing at the hands of Poseidon himself. Diana is a very dedicated person and has a strong determination. Once she gets into a fight, it's said she never gives up or surrenders. She never runs from any war, even if she knows she doesn't have any chance to win it. And she would die fighting. Her words, "Kill them all," prove her determination. The word "submit," when she defeats her enemies, proves that she wants her enemies to surrender. Now, if you wanted a template for how women should act when they join today's modern military, would it not be Wonder Woman, who once she gets into a fight never surrenders, never runs from any fight, knows she doesn't have a chance to win it, but will fight to the death anyway? Her words, "Kill them all," "submit." That's a template for you. That's how all women should act. Brainwash, brainwash, brainwash. Wonder Woman is a member of a fictional all-female tribe of Amazons, based on the Amazons of Greek mythology, who's sent to this man's world as an ambassador of peace, charged with the mission of imparting the Amazonian ideals of peace and harmony into a man's world, run by men who plunge the world into a grotesque war occasionally. Among the Amazons, she's known as Princess Diana. Interesting, isn't it? I believe the future King of England's mother, the princess known as Princess Diana, being the daughter of Amazon Queen Hippolyta. In a man's world, she takes the secret identity of Diana Prince, does Wonder Woman. Her powers actually include super strength, enhanced speed, stamina, and fight. She's highly proficient in hand-to-hand combat and in the art of tactical warfare. She also possesses an animal-like cunning and a natural rapport with animals, which has in the past been presented as an actual ability to communicate with the animal kingdom. She can talk to the animals. Yes, she is truly a goddess. She also makes use of her lasso of truth, which forces those bound by it to tell the truth. That's what the lasso does. She also has a pair of indestructible bracelets and an invisible plane. Wonder Woman was created during World War II, you know. She was originally depicted fighting the Axis military forces. In Roman history, there's a few accounts of Amazons raiding Asia Minor. From the early modern period, their name has become a word for women warriors. The Amazons were a nation of all-female warriors in classical Greek mythology who were possibly historical. Herodotus placed them in a region bordering Scythia in Sarmatia. A couple of the more well-known queens of the Amazons are Penthesilea, who participated in the Trojan War, and her sister, Hippolyta, whose magical girdle was the object of one of the labors of Hercules himself. Amazonian raiders were often depicted battles with Greek warriors in classical art. This word is probably even derived from an Iranian word called Hamazan, meaning warriors. A connected word is probably Hesychius of Alexander's gloss, meaning to make war. Has Persian roots also in its etymology, containing the Indo-Iranian root kar, meaning make. This also found in the word karma. Among classic Greeks, Amazon also had other less known meanings. One that was taken from a word implying without breast, too. You know, the mammary gland is connected with an ancient belief that Amazons had their right breasts, the women, because they were all women in the Amazon nation. Only women had their right breast cut off or burnt out. Why? So they would be able to use a bow easier and throw spears without the physical limitations or obstruction of a breast of a woman. But this doesn't show up in any works of art depicting the Amazon women, since they're always represented by both breasts. Although the right is quite often covered in those pictures on those reliefs, I have to admit. More on Wonder Woman. Talk Radio AM 640 when I return. It's the Spaceman, Talk Radio AM 640. Emails to space at 640toronto.com or spaceman at 640toronto.com, please. It's the only way I communicate. If you've got some information you'd like to pass along, you've got a comment or a critique on the show, or you'd just like to say where in the world you're listening to AVFS on Talk Radio AM 640 from, please feel free to use either of those two addresses. So I've been talking about Wonder Woman, the movie. The brainwasher, the latest brainwasher for women rule for the 6 months of the year that we're in now. Some believe the Amazons, and they were all women, were mythical people on the island of Lesbos in ancient Greece. Others say there's an historical foundation for them. The deities worshipped by them were Ares, who is directly connected to them as a god of war, and as a god of Thracia, and generally the northern origin of Greece. And Artemis, not the usual Greek goddess of that name, but an Asiatic deity, in a lot of ways her equivalent. It's said that the Amazons were originally the temple servants and priestesses of this goddess, and that the removal of the breast actually corresponded with the self-mutilation of the god Attis and the Galli, Roman priests of Rhea Cybele. She originates from Phrygia. Later she became associated with the Titaness Rhea, and the two figures were merged by the Romans in Roman mythology. Oh yes, even the Illuminati's religion transforms. As Rhea, meaning the earth, Cybele was wife to her brother Kronos, the sky. So from him, the sky, breeding with Rhea, the earth, gave birth to Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, and the all-father of all gods in Olympia, Zeus. Hence her Roman title of Magna Mater, or Great Mother, was Cybele, the wife to her brother Kronos. Notice brother. Yes, incest. It's the bloodline I've been speaking about that's coming back. It's here and alive today, in someone. Archaeological evidence even seems to confirm the existence of women warriors as Sarmatian women, active in military roles in operation and social life. Burial of armed Sarmatian women actually made up about 25% of the burials in the group, and are usually buried with bows. Amazons, and I'm not talking about bows nice and pretty girl bugs. I'm talking about the bow and arrow weaponry. These are Amazonian women warriors. Amazons were said to have lived in Pontus, which is a part of modern-day Turkey near the shore of the Black Sea. It was there that they formed this independent kingdom under the government of Queen Hippolyta, which means loose, unbridled mare in English. Does the word Hippolyta. Now, let me take you back into today's modern-day mythology, brainwashing the masses about this female-empowered phenomenon that's sweeping the world this weekend in motion picture theaters. Wonder Woman. She's totally ensconced in occultism, in black magic, powers. Diana possesses knowledge and understanding of magic. She has used her magical knowledge to use an alchemical spell even to create portals, for which she can communicate with the powers. And speaking of powers, she has divine empowerment given to her by the gods directly after being sculpted from clay. Several Olympian gods actually granted attributes to Diana, like superhuman strength, granted by Demeter, the goddess of the earth. Diana is literally as strong as the earth because of her link to the planet granted to her. She's even said to be the strongest of all, stronger than even Hercules. Wonder Woman has shown she is strong enough to hold herself or even beat those like, well, Superman, and able to physically outmatch other beings like Supergirl. Superhuman durability is another one of her powers, granted by Demeter again, the goddess of the earth. Diana possesses this huge resistance to damage and magical attacks. Her resistance to injury is not quite as great as any of the others mentioned, these meaty humans that I talked about, the superpowers. But due to her vast threshold for pain and her Amazon ability to heal at a superhuman rate, this easily makes up for the difference. She has withstood considerable beatings, bludgeoning damage in the form of hand-to-hand combat with metahuman opponents such as Superman. Even Captain Marvel she had a few bouts with. She's considerable resistance to human weaponries, too, though this is not absolute. Now, bullets can cause minor to moderate injury to her, but never life-threatening. I know Superman, they bounce off him, right? Later it was implied that only God made weapons could actually harm Wonder Woman. She's capable of flight, too, granted by Hermes, the messenger of God. The Wonder Woman is capable of unassisted flight by gliding on air currents. Superhuman speed is another one, granted by Hermes, the messenger god. She's able to think, react, move at superhuman speeds. According to Flash, she can easily keep up with him if he's at regular cruising speed. But he does beat her at top speed. She possesses superhuman reflexes, granted by Hermes, the messenger god again. Wonder Woman's reflexes are far behind the limitations of the finest human athletes. Far beyond. She was able to react to a barrage of gunfire once from multiple opponents at once unharmed. Batman even remarked that her reflexes were superior to that of even Superman. Yeah, she's got superhuman agility, too. Wonder Woman's agility is far beyond that of even an Olympic-level athlete, we're told, as is her balance and coordination. She has superhuman stamina. Wonder Woman can last a great deal of time in any fight, and with virtually anybody. She was held to her own devices and can combat any foe. As powerful as a doomsday clone even, and defeat them. She doesn't tire out, as her body produces no lactic acids in her muscles, you see. This power I find very curiously intriguing. She has this enhanced healing factor she's capable of. It was also granted by Demeter, goddess of the earth. Like the earth, Diana is constantly renewing herself, allowing her to quickly heal mild to moderate injuries in an amazing rate. Her normal regenerative abilities allow her to recover from injury within seconds to minutes. She possesses an incredible immunity, too, from poisons, toxins, as well as disease. She's got empathy, granted by Athena, goddess of wisdom. The sight of Athena apparently grants her increased insight. For example, Diana can often detect others' emotions and is now so fully immune to Dr. Psycho's illusions that she usually is not even aware of what illusions he's attempting to project on her. Another of her powers is charisma. She possesses animal empathy, granted by Artemis, goddess of the hunt, a Greek goddess. Ability to communicate with all forms of animals, including dinosaurs, it said, and her presence alone can bring a raging beast to a calm standstill. She's also able to directly command wild animals whenever she needs. She used bald eagles, for instance, to distract Superman one time after defeating him in battle. More of her powers and a bit more on Wonder Woman before I move on to the Beatles' 50th anniversary of Sgt. Pepper's. More next on Talk Radio, AM 640. This is AVFS. Hey, this is Spaceman. It's Talk Radio, AM 640. Emails, please send them to space640toronto.com or spaceman at 640toronto.com. So I'm on about Wonder Woman, the big rage in theaters around the world this weekend. And I'm wondering if she's going to be queen at the box office. What do you think? Oh, well, there's no doubt about it, is there? I've been going through some of her powers. Like, well, things like animal empathy, enhanced healing, superhuman agility, superhuman reflexes, capable of flight. She's got enhanced senses granted by Artemis, goddess of the hunt. Her eyesight is superhuman. So is her hearing, her taste, touch, and smell. She's capable of enhanced vision, too, and that's enhanced vision. She can also possess the hunter's eye, which allows her to always hit her mark. She can see to far greater distances than any normal human being. After a short period of blindness, Athena bound her own vision to her champion, not only restoring her sight, but granting her further insight as well. Wonder Woman is capable of dimensional teleportation. On occasion, Wonder Woman can literally leave the planet, it said, through meditation. She did this to rescue Artemis when he was off in hell. When she was off in hell, and has even conversed with the Greek gods on one occasion. Teleportation is the New Age movement transformation of the human being that the Illuminati are pushing. This transformation of the human from man to God, from woman to God, like Wonder Woman I'm speaking of tonight. Speaking of Wonder Woman, capable of dimensional teleportation, All her abilities, of course, are all godlike. She has advanced hand-to-hand combat capabilities. The supreme warrior on the battlefront. Hand-to-hand. Diana is the finest warrior ever born among the Amazons of Themisira. She's a master of armed and unarmed combat, proficient with nearly every weapon ever made, especially the bow and arrow, and the javelin, and the exotic martial arts styles of the Amazons. Batman once even remarked that Wonder Woman is the best melee fighter in the world. She has the wisdom of Athena, we're told, granted by Athena, of course, the goddess of wisdom. Diana possesses great wisdom and intelligence through the degree that she has. It'll actually vary from author to author, depending on who you read. But she is among the smartest and wisest members of the Justice League of America, along with the Martian, Manhunter, and Batman. She's capable of multilingualism, too. Diana's shown a heightened proficiency with languages, being able to speak her native Phoenician and ancient and modern Greek, English, Spanish, Portuguese, French, Mandarin, Chinese. She's even expressed a little difficulty, though, with the tones of Cantonese during an interview with Lois Lane once. You know, the girlfriend of Superman. Russian and Hindi, also spoken by Wonder Woman. Plus, through precious muscle control, she can mimic other people's voices for short conversations, like, say, on the phone. It's more difficult for her to mimic a man's voice than another woman's voice, though, it's said. She's a master tactician and strategist, granted by Athena, goddess of wisdom, of course. Diana's an accomplished strategist, tactician, trained in the arts of leadership, persuasion, diplomacy even, and possesses a great deal of courage as well. She is a gifted leader. She's Wonder Woman. She's got plenty of magical equipment, too, to go along with her magical equipment. You'll see the whole brainwashing experience in viewing Wonder Woman movies. It's to convey the new religion of the Illuminati to the person that's viewing, that's expected to become the enlightened human being. This is all coming with the Antichrist system, this New World Order religion, to come about. But it's all one great big deception. Wonder Woman possesses the amulet of Harmonia, originally a gift from the mad goddess Harmonia. Isn't that strange? The word harmony we get, meaning togetherness and friendship and getting along. It's the name of a mad Greek goddess. I'm not talking angry, I'm talking crazy. This small red disc that she has aids her in battles against Ares when she came into man's world. Another piece of woman's equipment is the bracelets of submission. They're modeled after the shackles the Amazons were once enslaved with on the island. The gauntlets were formed from the remains of Zeus's legendary Aegis shield and were reforged for her use by Hephaestus. Diana's superhuman reflexes also enable her to use the gauntlets to easily deflect projectiles like bullets, powerful energy blasts from beings such as Ares and Darkseid. She's even fast enough to protect herself from multi-vector attacks. Close range, the gauntlets block blades, weapons, and punches. She could do all that. They're even able to deflect Darkseid's energy attacks. When crossed, the gauntlets regenerate a remnant of the Aegis itself, forming an impenetrable barrier just in front of them, which allows Diana to protect herself and those behind her from area attacks. They're also capable of channeling Zeus's holy lightning when struck together. Zeus, her father. She has gold armor. It's for use in large battles, we're told. Wonder Woman has a golden body armor with chest plate and an open visor helmet and large non-functional wings on her back. Then there's the Lancinarian morphing disc. Wonder Woman has at her disposal a small lightweight disc of Lancinarian technology that, when triggered by her thoughts alone, transforms into a transparent version of whatever object or vehicle is appropriate for her needs. How about that for conjuring up? The device has been used for several purposes, including a communication device, but it's most usually used by Wonder Woman in the form of an invisible jet plane. Now, here's her most well-known piece of equipment. I talked about it a little bit before, even to the people who've never even followed this former comic book super personality, Wonder Woman. It's the lasso of truth. It's her signature weapon. Most who are captured in it are forced to answer any questions that she asks and are unable to lie. It can't be broken, it can't be snapped, and it can't be cut. So you have to tell the truth when you're lassoed by Wonder Woman's lasso. She can also control it to a certain degree using telepathy. Well, another New Age transformational gift. Turning man into gods. Telepathy. As you may well be aware, it's the supposed communication of thoughts directly from one person's mind to another person's mind without using words or signals. Let me tell you now, flat out, honestly, it's black magic. It's the New Age religion, too. In the world of Wonder Woman, telepathy is also used to erase memory, heal the mentally ill, and in some cases implant commands that must then be obeyed. Another piece of equipment used by Wonder Woman is the Black Lantern ring. In her past, originally, brief period as a Black Lantern, Diana was given a Black Lantern ring by Necron. She also used a star sapphire ring. Originally, Diana temporarily held a copy of Carol Ferris's star sapphire ring and was drafted into its core as an emergency measure for the final part of what was called the Blackest Night. Once the battle was over, Diana was officially discharged from the star sapphire core. A group of super people. Wonder Woman has magical transportation, too. She gets around by the sheer power of black magic. What am I referring to? The invisible jet, of course. She has Cain Milohai's seashell, too, as part of her equipment. It was originally granted as a boon to Diana Prince, her other name when she's not Wonder Woman. When she pledged the loyalty to Cain Milohai in order to save her mother Hippolyta, this seashell floats in the air and in water, and it can even grow in size. How big? To carry large numbers of passengers, can travel between dimensions even. More black magic power. And even places that are otherwise mystically inaccessible. Yes, this seashell can get you there. She also possesses the sandals of Hermes, winged sandals, a symbol of the Greek messenger god Hermes. You know, in Roman mythology, he was Mercury. You've seen the wings. Yes, let me tell you now. This movie, Wonder Woman, is under the guise of a woman as a warrior teaching black magic and the New World religion coming for the New World Order. It's a Spaceman. I'm back with more right after this. It'll be Sgt. Pepper's. I'm the guy to call us Spaceman. This is Talk Radio, AM 640. Emails to space640toronto.com or spaceman at 640toronto.com. Oh, tonight's show, getting the inbox very crowded. So, this week just happens to be also the 50th anniversary of the release of the Beatles' highly acclaimed album, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. They did the 40th anniversary too, you know. Now here's 10 years later. That was back in 2007. 10 years later, 2017, here they are again with Sgt. Pepper's. Why this album? Just because it's the most acclaimed, probably what a lot of people say the Beatles' best album was. No. Your clue here is the hierarchy of the secret societies that have been deeply involved in the black magic occult since they've existed. They're responsible for the movie I just talked about, Wonder Woman. This includes the ritual sacrifice of children and babies, as you saw in Manchester last week. This knowledge has been kept from the minds of society at large until just recently. It's now only a matter of time when the masses of the people become fully aware of the real agenda behind the secret societies and the true purpose of why they exist. The highest of the initiated, of the highest levels of Freemasonry, High Priest of the Golden Dawn, is said to be Aleister Crowley. A white male child of perfect innocence, he once said, and intelligence makes the most suitable victim for a child sacrifice. Aleister Crowley did them quite often. As a matter of fact, he did it at Boleskine House in Scotland. You know that house was bought by Jimmy Page. Just burned down a couple of years ago. And I believe that David Bowie was in the fire. Can't get into that deeply tonight because I want to talk about Sgt. Pepper, who is Aleister Crowley. That's who Sgt. Pepper is. It's Aleister Crowley. He's even on the picture of the album cover. Top row, second from the left end. Aleister Crowley, prominently displayed on Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, because Aleister Crowley is the driving force behind rock music of today. Even they're still using his precepts. Crowley's large influence on rock music and its fans and all other genres of music too, really, are well known. Now, lest you think that Aleister Crowley, born in England, is just some scary fool that no one took seriously, think again. Crowley had the largest influence of modern rock music of anyone. Unbeknownst to most people, a lot of his hellish music, The World Idolizes, was written and sang by devout followers of Crowley and Satanism. Zeppelin guitarist Jimmy Page was a devout follower of Aleister Crowley, proclaimed himself, Aleister did, as the Beast 666. He was also a 33rd degree Freemason, considered as the master Satanist in the 20th century. In 71, guitarist Jimmy Page bought Boleskine House, Crowley's old house on the shores of Loch Ness, where Crowley practices hellish satanic sex magic rituals, including human sacrifices, as I said. Yes, this album, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band having another anniversary, again brought up by the Illuminati and publicized this weekend. They say it came to symbolize the era and shape the musical landscape for the baby boomer generation. But Aleister Crowley did that. Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album was just one of his tools. It was an immediate critical and popular sensation described by fans, music critics, fellow musicians as innovative in every sense. And it wasn't the old Beatles band. The last time the Beatles actually ever performed in public so you could see them was 1966. Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band came out the next year. 67. Totally a bunch of music, songs that could only be performed in a studio. The Beatles never performed in public again, never again seen. That is, except for that one unannounced show on the roof of the building in London at Apple Music, if you'll recall, on the roof, unannounced in 1969. But guess what? There was another new person on that stage impersonating the original Paul McCartney, the Blood Sacrifice. I'll get into that in this next couple of hours on the Sgt. Pepper Lonely Hearts Club Band album on its anniversary, its 50th. The number of death, 5. Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band was an immediate critical and popular sensation, as I said. It was an adventure in concept, sound, songwriting, because Lennon and McCartney didn't write any of those songs. A man that worked for Tavistock and Aleister Crowley, Theo Adorno, wrote these songs. The studio technology, not to mention Sir Peter Blake's eye-popping artwork on the cover, released on June 1st, 1967. The album launched the summer of love, the psychedelia, spirituality, acid craze that swept the globe. Now you see why the original band of the Beatles, the mop-top Fab Four cute boys who could do She Loves You, Yeah, 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 Chains, My Baby's Got Me Locked Up in Chains, all those little cute little ditties. But this, no, this was not any Beatle, Lennon McCartney composition. This was Theo Adorno, the Tavistock wizard of songwriting. And all of the greatest musicians, too, are on Sgt. Pepper's. Not the Beatles playing the music on the albums. I know it sounds strange, doesn't it? What you've heard from the music professional gurus who seem to know it all with the public releases from the record companies that they get and read. No, this is the real story. The London Times newspaper once described Sgt. Pepper as a decisive moment in the history of Western civilization. I guess so. This was the beginning of what was to be the real reason for the British invasion of music. It sold drugs, free love, lifestyle to an entire generation and pulled the Western world away from the concept of a single God and Christianity. It's the Spaceman's Talk Radio, AM 640. The anniversary of the 50th anniversary of Sgt. Pepper's next. I'm going to call this Spaceman as Talk Radio, AM 640. Emails to space@640toronto.com or spaceman@640toronto.com. Just begun the fourth story tonight that I've covered First being the latest, freshest terrorist attack in London, on London Bridge, and in Borough Market. Then there was Trump leaving Brexit, really. And then there was Wonder Woman, the movie. And now, the fourth tonight, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album celebration this week. The 50th anniversary. They celebrated the 40th anniversary, too. Why? Because this album... Well, let me just show you what I have. Ever heard of the story of Paul McCartney actually dying in 1967? The real Paul McCartney, the original, and replaced by another that was inserted into the Beatles. The only public appearance, remember, was when they were on the roof of Apple, and you know, there was hair all over their face. Their hair grew much longer. They weren't the mop-top cute Fab Four any longer. John Lennon's hairstyle grew down to his shoulders. He parted it in the middle, wore the granny glasses. And Paul McCartney had the mustache on, the longer hair. You couldn't tell if that was a replacement or not. And you certainly couldn't tell in the music. It was an outdoor, impromptu jam session for a few songs, and they were gone. Not any great close-ups of television cameras were there. Was one camera. So you see how the ruse could have been done. No, the last time that actual group with the real Paul McCartney took place, 1966, Candlestick Park, San Francisco, USA. After that, that was it. Now, as I say, you ever heard the story about Paul McCartney actually dying in 1967? Beatles music, beginning in 1967, was written by someone else. That someone else was Tavistock's Theodore Wiesengrund Ordono. Tavistock, by the way, is Britain's brainwashing capital. It was Ordono who wrote influential academic papers on the addictiveness of popular music in the 40s and the 50s. He also advocated pop music as a form of social control. They wanted to sell drugs. They wanted to sell free love. No more God. No more Christianity. He proved his point by applying the whole addictive bag of tricks, practically penning all the Beatles hits for them, beginning in 1967, and Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, before dying in 1969 at the age of nearly 66. Another strange twist is the Paul is dead phenomenon. McCartney's death gave the new Beatles a reincarnation, a Masonic ritual of rebirth. Had to take place before Ordono's control would be complete. Aleister Crowley was Sgt. Pepper. The album released in 1967. Aleister Crowley died exactly 20 years before that release date of 1967 for this album. The year 1947 when Aleister Crowley died. What's the opening line to side one, track one of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band? Ordono wrote this. It's 20 years ago today that Sgt. Pepper taught the band to play. Get it? Aleister Crowley was Sgt. Pepper, teaching the band through Ordono, the songwriter. I'm going to repeat it for you. The album released in 1967. Aleister Crowley dies 20 years, exactly 20 years before that. His death date is 1947. The opening line, it's 20 years ago today that Sgt. Pepper taught the band to play. And there he is on the cover, top left, Very top row, second from the end. Why second from the end and not first? Second, 2, is the number of total separation from the true God in numerology. Now, in 1965, Help was released in England on August 6th of 1965. August 13th in North America. Movie plot goes like this. In the beginning, an Indian cult is about to sacrifice a woman to the fictional goddess of Kali. Now, we're finished with She Loves You, Yeah, 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 if you can understand me now. We're done with that. Then they notice that she doesn't have the sacrificial ring on. We're talking about a sacrifice of a woman here to the goddess Kali. It's revealed that Ringo Starr, the drummer, the star of the show really here, has the ring on his finger. Because it was Ringo, remember? Sent to him by the victim and her sister, who's also the high priestess in this movie. Both of whom are fans of the Beatles, of course, because everybody in the world was then. Determined to retrieve the ring and sacrifice the girl, the great Swami, the head of the cult, and several cult members and the high priestess leave for London. After several failed attempts to steal the ring without Ringo noticing off of his finger, they confront him in an Indian restaurant. Ringo learns that if he doesn't return the ring soon, he'll have to become the blood sacrifice. They went from She Loves You, Yeah, 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 I Want to Hold Your Hand, to blood sacrifices in 1967. It wasn't Lennon and McCartney. It was Theo Ordono, with the magical prowess of Aleister Crowley behind it. So after a few attempts to steal the ring in the movie, without noticing, they confront Ringo in an Indian restaurant. Ringo learns that if he doesn't return the ring soon, he becomes the sacrifice, and so they're going to kill a Beatle. Unfortunately, the ring is stuck and he can't get it off because he was going to give it away. The band is then chased around London by members of the Indian cult of the goddess Kali. Quite funny, actually. Headed by McKern and Braun's characters. In a desperate effort to dispose of the ring, the band resorts to the bumbling efforts of a mad scientist played by Spinetti and his assistant played by Kinnear. When his equipment turns out to have no effect on the ring, Spinetti character decides that he too must somehow acquire it. So the band runs into the Swiss Alps, narrowly escapes a trap there, thanks to the help of a high priestess who is secretly helping the Beatles. Why? Because she's a fan of the Mop Top Fab Four. So, to stay safe, they ask for protection from Scotland Yard. They hide in Buckingham Palace until they're narrowly captured by the scientists. From there, they run to the Bahamas, followed by the Scotland Yard officers, the scientists, and the cult members. They're all chasing after the Beatles, the Fab Four. After Ringo is narrowly captured, the other Beatles pose as him in order to lure out the cult members to be arrested by the Scotland Yard. Despite their best efforts, though, Ringo is captured by the scientist, who intends on cutting off his finger to get the ring. The high priestess rescues Ringo by giving the scientist a shrinking solution. In exchange, she intended on using the solution to shrink his finger to remove the ring. Now the two of them dive into the ocean to escape, but Ringo can't swim, and they're both captured by the great Swami. In the end, when Ringo is about to be sacrificed, the ring suddenly comes off his finger. Then he puts the ring on the leader of the cult, and a big attempt to sacrifice him starts. Release date of the movie? July 29, 1965, a hidden 11. Length of the movie? 92 minutes, another hidden 11. Then came the 666, because the year was 1966. 1966. Turn the 9 over, upright, and you have 666 and a 1. These albums were released in 1966. First, Yesterday and Today, released June 14th, 1966. That was the 9th Capitol release by the Beatles, and was released only in the United States. This album is remembered mostly for the controversy surrounding its original cover image, because you see, the original of this Beatle album is remembered mostly for the controversy, which was called the Butcher cover. It had the band dressed in white smocks with blood spattered all over them, and was literally covered with decapitated baby dolls and pieces of meat and blood. Was that the last album for the blood sacrifice of the real Paul McCartney to appear on? This album saw the release of all the tracks from the previous 2 British releases that were not included in the American counterparts. Yesterday and Today would be the last Beatles album before the group's breakup to have a track listing that was different from its British counterpart. Then Revolver, released, hit August 28th, 1966, Capitol Records. Revolver, with its working titles, Abracadabra also. Another working title that they were going to name it was Magical Circles, and Beatles on Safari was another one. It took on an attitude of exploration. Even further, the Beatles were even deeper into the underground art and drug scenes at this time, which were influencing their music entirely in new ways, we were told. Here's your Aleister Crowley and Theo Adorno influence that was definitely not there before. Then, strangely, a collection of Beatles oldies was on the other album released December 10th, 1966, Parlophone Records. The British pressings. An ancestor of sorts to the Beatles' 1962-1966, that collection of Beatles oldies was released as the Greatest Hits package, showing 8 songs unavailable on any of the UK releases, along with the 8 other hits. Then, the transformation, or, if you like, the reborn Beatles with the new member. Out comes Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, released June 1st, 1967. That's why the hair on the face of the band members and the change in looks to hide the fact another bass player was inserted for the original Paul McCartney. A blood sacrifice is required for rebirth. Remember, it was Aleister Crowley who said, "A white male child of perfect innocence and intelligence makes the most suitable victim." The cutest one, the favorite of all of the girls, was Paul McCartney, the perfect innocent, the perfect little white male child. That was the reference to the original Paul McCartney, the real one. Back with more on the other side of the break on Talk Radio, AM 640. It's Space and AVFS. I'm the guy they call the Spaceman. It's Talk Radio, AM 640. Direct your emails, please, to spaceman at 640toronto.com or space at 640toronto.com. Just want to bring back, remind you of one more little thought that I've just imparted to you in that last segment. The last album that the real Paul McCartney appeared on had some controversy surrounding it. It was in 1966. Yesterday and Today would be the Beatles' last album before the group's breakup, to have a track listing that was different from its British counterpart. The last album for the blood sacrifice of the real Paul McCartney was also nicknamed the Butcher's album, because the boys were all dressed in in white smocks with red blood splattered all over them. The cover was littered with decapitated baby dolls and pieces of meat and blood. That was the last album the real McCartney appeared on. A blood sacrifice had to be made for the super success of the band to get spiritual help from the netherworld. Aleister Crowley saw to it. Then, the transformation begun. The next album, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, with now hair growing all over their face, looks changed. How could you even ever tell? This trick, by the way, was also done, someone else taking over the person itself and masquerading around is Paul McCartney. Is Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson didn't look anything like the real Michael Jackson at the end. Why? They used the excuse of pigmentation, changing the skin, something Michael Jackson wanted. Yeah, right. And also, they used the facial redo on all of the work that they did on his face, hiding the real identity, that it wasn't the young Michael Jackson of old as the child star. No, someone else became him. They owned him. They wanted him. And after they wanted to be him. That's what's up with the Michael Jackson story, but I don't have time to go into it deeply tonight, of course. So the transformation, if you like, the reborn Beatles, having to have a blood sacrifice, it's required for rebirth, remember, was Aleister Crowley's idea. The Rolling Stones did exactly the same thing. Brian Jones was the blood sacrifice in that act. Look through all the rock bands that reached superstardom have one of those stories. The cover of the Sgt. Pepper's album by the Beatles showed a background of, according to Ringo Starr, people we like and admire, he said. He said that in Hit Parade magazine in the October 1976 edition. Paul McCartney said of Sgt. Pepper's cover, "We were going to have photos on the wall of all our heroes." One of the Beatles' heroes included on the cover was the infamous Satanist Aleister Crowley. Second, top row from the left. Most people, especially in 1967, didn't even know who this Aleister Crowley was, head warlock of Europe. But the Beatles certainly did. Crowley's photo appears on the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper album cover. He's the second from the left, as I said, on the very top row. Now, if you take an in-depth look at the transition of a simple rock band playing simple songs, all of a sudden in one album being totally transformed into a drug culture selling occult Satan-worshipping message coming from this monster band, that had captivated an entire planet, lured them with honey, and fed them poison. In the end, I contend there was no way that four Liverpudlians could ever even think about, much less conceive, this intricate web weaving in mysticism, death, religion, and drugs all in one damn year. Come on. Charles Manson claimed the Beatles were hiding references in an upcoming racial war in their albums, too. That was Charles Manson, the author of the Tate LaBianca murders in California. He was also part of the Tavistock spiritual witchcraft attack that was hitting the world. The Paul is dead rumors surrounding Paul McCartney began on October 12, 1969, when somebody phoned a radio disc jockey at WKNR-FM in Dearborn, Michigan, serving the Detroit market, identifying himself as Tom, allegedly Tom Zarsky of Eastern Michigan University. The caller announced that McCartney was dead. He also asked the disc jockey at WKNR-FM in Dearborn, Michigan, to play Revolution No. 9 backwards. Give thought he heard the words, "Turn me on, Deadman. Turn me on, Deadman." Fred Laber, John Gray, Jr.'s at the University of Michigan, actually published a review of Abbey Road called McCartney Dead. New evidence brought to light, itemizing various clues of McCartney's death on Beatle album covers. In the October 14, 1969 issue of the Michigan Daily, Terry Knight, another former disc jockey, Detroit DJ, and then singer on Capitol Records, visited the Beatles in London for the August 1968 White Album session, during which Ringo Starr walked out. Guess what? Ringo Starr didn't play the drums from Sgt. Pepper's On. They had studio men, studio musicians. The London studio musicians were the performers, and all of the talent base stock of lead guitarists that the Brits have are on there. Jimi Hendrix is on the White Album. Eric Clapton plays on the White Album. So, although Terry's song, St. Paul, was written about the impending breakup of the Beatles, it was picked by the radio stations in autumn of '69 as a tribute to the late Paul McCartney. This disc jockey also produced, with John Small and Dan Carlisle, The Beatle Plot. It's an hour-long radio show on the rumor of his death. The show actually aired on WKNR-FM in Detroit, Michigan, late '69, and has been repeated for the years since on Detroit radio. The rumor gained huge momentum when the overnight disc jockey on the huge top 40 station WABC in New York discussed it on October 21st, 1969. Young was immediately fired for doing the broadcast from WABC, a big 50,000-watt clear channel radio station in New York. He could be heard clearly in 38 states with that blowtorch. And as far as Africa's Atlantic coast, soon national and international media pick up on the story of this new Beatle craze that took off. And it was all brand new. The most thorough account of the history and origin of the rumor actually is assembled by the American journalist Andrew Reeve in his 2004 book called Turn Me On, Dead Man. Now, the story of the alleged death, the most common tale, is that on Wednesday, November 9, 1966 at 5 a.m., Paul McCartney, the real one, while working on the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album, storms out of the recording session studio after an argument with the other Beatles and rode off in his Austin Healey. He didn't know that the lights had changed. A line in the Day in the Life song on Sgt. Pepper's, because he was busy watching The Pretty Girl on the Pavement, Lovely Rita. Another song on the album. After narrowly missing her, dressed in blue, she's a blur on the back of Abbey Road, by the way, jaywalking. Yeah, that's her. He then crashes into a light pole, a light standard. A car crash sound is even heard in Revolution No. 9, and he's pronounced dead on a Wednesday morning at 5 o'clock as the day begins. That's the song, lyric of the song She's Leading Home. And nobody found out because this news was withheld. Wednesday morning papers didn't come. Lady Madonna song that Ordonez wrote in that. A funeral procession held days later implied the Abbey Road album cover. It's the Spaceman on Talk Radio AM 640. There's more right after this. It's the Spaceman, Talk Radio AM 640. Emails to space640toronto.com or spaceman at 640toronto.com. I'm going through, on the 50th anniversary of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, I'm telling the story again of the death of Paul McCartney, replaced by another, as that band got a new life. You have to change the name, you have to change the look, you have to change it all for the rebirth. Theo Ordonez wrote the songs. Aleister Crowley had the idea to sell the New World Order's agenda through Beatle music. After they had the cute Fab Four win everyone's hearts over in the world with a promotion you wouldn't believe to set that band on that pedestal, even to the point of paying girls to come down and scream. What a show. What an idea. What a concept. And it did the job. It sold free love. It sold drugs, this band. And then the harder boys came along after, the heavy metal, heroin, Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin. And it just morphed from there into outright, blatant, satanic lyric. And of course the sound to go with it. Because that's the mark of a good song. To take a feeling and present that feeling in sound and then put the words over top that create that same, or that tell you about that emotion. And you see, that is art. Some students, the bass guitar, have claimed a marked difference between the style and quality of the original Paul's playing between earlier Beatles albums and the later ones. This can be linked to a change in both style, influenced by Brian Wilson's melodic bass lines and recording technique. Prior to 1966, he often recorded his bass live, did Paul McCartney, the original one. But around the year, he began to overdub the bass parts with direct injection recording techniques, supposedly giving him a greater ability to form melodic bass lines. I believe it was the new musician. Additionally, according to McCartney, in a 1988 Musician magazine interview, the change in his bass playing coincided with the change in instruments. In 1966, it was a Rickenbacker presented Paul with a left-handed 4001 bass guitar. They had originally tried to sell him one in 1964, which he started using more around the time of Revolver. Now, according to Believers, the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band cover shows a group of mourners standing in front of a freshly dug grave. Around that grave, there are several symbols. A doll, a cracked head, represents Paul McCartney's fatal injury. And remember the doll, or the dolls, rather, I told you about on the Butcher's album? And that cover, by the way, was even covered over with another cover because they said they couldn't have that out there, the Butcher's cover. They couldn't do it, so they put the Yesterday and Today cover on it, which is them standing in the staircase, if you'll recall. But in some copies, you could actually peel away the picture of them on the staircase, the cute Fab Four picture, staring down at them, shot from below them. They're looking down at you. You can actually rip off that part, and underneath is the old Butcher cover. Hastily done, and got them out there in the pressing. They just put the new picture over the old one that they nixed. When in actual fact, I think it was a plant to show people who were initiated, who understand this blood sacrifice. So in Sgt. Pepper's cover. A doll with a cracked head replaces. It represents McCartney's fatal injury. Another doll is printed on its shirt, "Welcome the Rolling Stones." The band that produced songs with black magic messages has been heralded. Welcome, Rolling Stones. Who were the bad boys? Oh, the Beatles were just joyous young teeny bop love kids who did some marijuana. But the Rolling Stones were hardcore druggies who sang about Satan right away. Pleased to introduce you. I hope you guessed my name. A toy car on one knee and a bloody left-handed driving glove. Paul played guitar with his left hand, of course. And on the other, a TV that's not turned on represents the news blackout about his death. Over the letter L on the cover of the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's album, the letter L in Beatles can be seen Paul McCartney's rugby trophy. Under the word Beatles, yellow flowers in the shape of a bass guitar are seen, representing the instrument Paul often played, the Hofner bass. Also, the guitar is facing the direction it would if a left-handed guitarist were playing it. Paul was the only left-handed guitarist in the band. Now, within the flowers comprising the guitar shape, the word Paul, followed by a question mark, is seen. Although there are only 3 strings on this bass guitar, where a bass guitar usually got 4, representing the loss of one member of the foursome. A small statue of a Hindu goddess, Kali, the destroyer, is seen in the front of the grave, pointing a finger at Paul and another at the wax figure of Paul, the replacement. 2 Pauls. Get it? Also, Edgar Allan Poe, a writer whose poems and short stories often concern death, is shown on the cover of the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album. If a mirror is placed horizontally across the flowers that spells Beatles, a message is seen. And it says BENICE and the number 3. Or be nice 3. In other words, there are only 3 left. McCartney is the only person holding a wooden instrument, too, representing his coffin. And the instrument is the only one that is black, representing death. And, of course, the Abbey Road album is a Indian funeral procession. And supposedly there are no shoes on one person, the deceased. And the only person not wearing shoes crossing Abbey Road is, of course, McCartney. Now, the instrument that Paul is holding in the picture of Sgt. Pepper's is a cor anglais, the only instrument shown on the cover which is not used in a marching band. It's Paul's true instrument. Would have been the tuba, but this was the cor anglais, which is sitting unused at the feet of the wax figure of Ringo. Paul is the only Beatle wearing a cool color, blue, and the other 3 Beatles are wearing warm colors. Paul McCartney is the only person with a hand over his heart, a religious symbol for a blessing of the dead, and also a hand over McCartney's head can be seen, which in India is a sign of death. While John, Ringo, and George are standing at an angle, Paul is facing straight forward, making Paul appear to be another cardboard cutout. Also, Paul is supposedly buried on the Greek island of Lesso. Just talked about that earlier. Wonder Woman. And if you read the Beatles' name, which has a square beside it, it makes it say, be at Lesso. If a mirror is laid horizontally across the words Lonely Hearts on the drum of the cover of Sgt. Pepper, the mirror image spells 1, the numeral 1, then the word 1, and then the Roman numeral for 9, then HE with a separation, and then in DIE, the word die. This has been interpreted by believers in two ways. One interpretation is that the 1 and the I each represent one of the Beatles, while the X stands for the one that is missing. The second interpretation is the date of Paul's alleged death is given in this interpretation. The 1 and 1 makes the number 11, meaning November, and the 1 and the X are taken to represent Roman numerals, making the number 9. According to this interpretation, the message is either September 11th he died, using the British system of writing dates, or November 9 he died. In 1966, November 9 was a Wednesday, referring to how he died on a Wednesday morning at 5 o'clock. Now, using the American system of dates, neither of which would fit with this theory, McCartney died during the recording of Sgt. Pepper. The album was recorded between December 66 and April 67. The arrow formed between the word he and die points to Paul. On the back cover of Sgt. Pepper, McCartney is facing backwards, which is, according to believers, because he was dead, replaced by an imposter on the photograph. Also, George Harrison is pointing to the lyric Wednesday morning at 5 o'clock as the day begins, from the song She Was Leaving Home, allegedly a reference to the day and time when the real Paul McCartney would crash and be killed. The words next to McCartney's head are, without you. Also, if read starting with somebody calls you, you answer quite slowly, from Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, it reads, somebody calls you, you answer quite slowly. Wednesday morning at 5 o'clock as the day begins, and life flows on within you and without you, and you're on your own, you're in the street. This hidden message is supposedly meaning that Paul was thinking about picking Rita up, and the fact that he might have burned in the car alone, and that Rita actually escaped. More of this when I return on Talk Radio AM 640 in the 50th anniversary of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album release. Touted the greatest, the most impactful of all the Beatles albums. It's AVFS. This is Talk Radio, AM 640. Emails to spaceman at 640toronto.com or space at 640toronto.com. Let me, if I may, update you on the London Bridge attack tonight, happening at 10:10 British time earlier tonight, where a van drives onto London's London Bridge and mows down a bunch of people. 6 now are officially declared dead, along with the 3 subjects. Yeah, the suspects that I thought would never be captured alive either. Well, there it is. They're now dead. 6 others dead, too, and many injured. On this kind of same type of attack as on Westminster Bridge earlier in March, knife-wielding person drives vehicle into crowded walkways across the bridge. Same with here tonight. Now 6 dead, including 3 of the terrorists, the suspects. Speaking of death, I'm covering the 50th anniversary of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album, where Paul McCartney is replaced. The band is renewed to a whole new different sound because it's not Lennon and McCartney anymore. Theo Adorno is now writing the songs, and many guest musicians are coming in and playing tracks in this. Now, on the back cover of Sgt. Pepper, McCartney's facing backwards, which is, according to believers, because he was dead and was replaced by an imposter in the photograph. Also, George Harrison is pointing at the lyric Wednesday morning at 5 o'clock as the day begins from the song She's Leaving Home, allegedly a reference to the day and time when the original Paul McCartney would crash and be killed. Now, the other Beatles' hands are actually spelling a word. George's fingers are spelling the letter A. John is spelling the letter V, and Ringo is spelling the letter E. The only letter missing to complete the wording as love is the O. This has been suggested to be the singling out of Paul McCartney being the only Beatle without an O in his name. All the other three have O's in their name. The circle, or O, is the symbol for the sun, you see. They're sun worshippers. It's the shape of the sun. And the Ouroboros, the snake that forms a circle when it's got its tail in its mouth, as the serpent that swallows its tail. It's the symbol of the universal karmic law of the cosmos. It's a symbol of karmic law. The inside cover of the Sgt. Pepper's album has Paul wearing an emblem on his shirt sleeve whose initials have been suggested to be OPD, for officially pronounced dead, or original Paul dead. But it in fact reads OPP and is a badge for the Ontario Provincial Police. It's often rumored that the replacement for Paul was a man who won a Toronto look-alike contest, and that he was wearing an OPP badge. Now, finally, the Beatles' flowers have a flower that looks like an O, or so if you join the Beatles, you get B at Lesso. Lesso, an island in Greece, bought by the Beatles, and the message called Paul to meet all of the Beatles at their island. Now the badge, the OPP badge, inside cover of the Pepper album, has Paul McCartney wearing an emblem on his shirt sleeve whose initials have suggested to be OPD, for officially pronounced dead, as I said. Now, finally, the Beatles' flowers have a flower that looks like an O. So if you join the Beatles and O, you get B at Lesso, their island again. Now, on the first track, Paul introduces, that's the original Paul McCartney? No, it's the replacement Paul McCartney, introducing Billy Shears, the leader of the fictional Sgt. Pepper's band and supposed Paul look-alike contest winner, which it wasn't. In the song Day in a Life, dramatization of the demise of Tara Brown in the first part of the song A Day in a Life has been suggested by some to be an account of Paul's death. According to this, he was driving erratically under the influence of some drug, possibly LSD, which spawns the line from Theo Adorno, he blew his mind out in a car and crashed because he didn't know that the lights had changed. The line, they'd seen his face before, is suggested to refer to the fact that many of the witnesses of the crash knew what the real Paul McCartney looked like, at least before the alleged disfiguring accident. The line, I'd love to turn you on has been interpreted as an allusion to the wish of other band members to actually tell you, let you know the truth of what happened to this band called the Beatles and the blood sacrifice given for the rebirth, which was, of course, their drug influence, their drug influence on all of society. Also, the gibberish heard at the end of the song, if you listen closely, you'll hear a faint voice. If you play it backwards and listen even closer over the talking of the bystanders, you will hear someone saying, "Help me, help me," very softly. Tara Brown was a young socialite and an issue of peerage as a member of the Irish aristocratic family of the Oranmore and Brown, whose ultimately their death in 1966 was immortalized by the Beatles song A Day in the Life. The ranks of the peerage, by the way, are this way: Duke, Marquess, Earl, then Viscount, and Baron, if you're interested. Brown was the son of Dominic Brown, the fourth Baron of Oranmore and Brown, the Irish aristocratic family. A member of the House of Lords since 1927, and later became famous for having served in that house longer than any other member, finally being evicted during government reforms in 1999, the upside-down 666 year. And his mother was Una Guinness, heiress to the Guinness fortune and the beer company, and the youngest of the three Golden Guinness girls. One of the older brothers was the Honourable Garrick Brown of Lugala, County Wicklow in Ireland, an enthusiast of traditional Irish music and a founding member of the Chieftains, if you know them, the Irish leading pop group of traditional musicians. It's Space. More when I return on Sgt. Pepper's on Talk Radio AM 640. I'm the guy to call us Spaceman. It's Talk Radio AM 640. If you want to communicate, I communicate by email only, space@640toronto.com or spaceman@640toronto.com. I was just telling you last segment about Tara Brown, a young socialite in London. His father, fourth Baron Oranmore and Brown family, the aristocratic family from Ireland, whose mother was Una Guinness, the heiress to the Guinness fortune, youngest of the three girls they call the Golden Guinness girls. And you know why they call them golden? And one of his older brothers was the Honourable Garrick Brown of Lugala, as I was saying, in Ireland. Now, Tara Brown, the son, was a member of London's swinging counterculture in the 1960s. And everybody wanted to be a rock star then. And he was even known to use drugs recreationally and befriended a few rock musicians. One of them was Paul McCartney, and was romantically linked also to the model Amanda Lear at the time. I read the news today. Oh boy. An anonymous narrator seeks information about the world outside of his own life. He reads a newspaper, a chronicle of the undifferentiated, relentless march of human events. Oh boy is a euphemism, by the way, for oh God, right? An exclamation of surprise, fear, powerless in the face of reality, in the vein of the bromide that declares the mediocre minds discuss people, average minds discuss events, and great minds discuss ideas. The narrator is seeking information through the media beyond that which is available in the course of ordinary narcissistic personal experience. I read the news today, oh boy, about a lucky man who made the grade. So, the irony of this line. The individual has been blessed by fortune in the sense that he has made the grade, achieved material or worldly success. On a deeper level, one who dies because of inattention in a traffic accident is the opposite of lucky. He's in fact cursed, doomed, isn't he? A victim of the fate that claims us all in the end. This sarcasm expresses uneasiness about the transitory nature of the temporal human ambition. Now, a group of people stood and stared. Another line in that song goes, nobody was really sure if he was from the House of Lords. There's your giveaway. Theo Ordonez, the writer, passing along the information. Very well buried, hidden. Unless you know. The anonymous crowd is gripped by impolite, morbid curiosity. A crowd of people stood and stared. The vicarious thrill taken from viewing death at first hand. Now, from the knowledge that someone has died, but not me, I'm still alive. Of course, death is the most important fact, and ultimately the defining reality of human experience. But the nature of that experience can't be accessed secondhand. The anonymous, gaping street crowd degrades the significance of this event. It reduces what should be a moment of solemnness to an opportunity to access cheap thrills. The member of the House of Lords, this member, a British political institution of long tradition, has political power and inherited wealth. That type of a person of that class might be known to average people throughout, their career, through pictures in the media, seen on TV, but these people would have no chance to tell it was someone well known in the media, simply due to the fact that this victim had a head wound from the impact of the collision in the car. Paul McCartney, the original. Now, Aleister Crowley, who is Sgt. Pepper, who taught the band to play, in other words, the black magic, is probably the black magician who is the most popular foreground figure in Hollywood in the music industry all time. He's considered being the one who invented backward masking on musical recordings used by the Beatles, Stones, so many, and a great percentage of the rock, rap, hip-hop musicians, the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, and into the 2000s are highly influenced by the so-called black magician Aleister Crowley. Same precepts over and over, and it's often not even by their own choice. The satanic influence is something that is programmed into the artist's mind by their handlers, their agents, their recording labels, to serve a specific goal, of course, to program the masses. Everyone knows that music is a great, conduit with which to manipulate society. The most popular black magician, together with L. Ron Hubbard, the founder of the Church of Scientology of today, has a significant influence on young people's minds from the 50s right up to 2017. The gibberish at the end of the song of the original UK album and eventual CD edition of the album, the so-called Inner Groove, when played in reverse, has been interpreted as, among other things, "Will Paul be back as Superman?" The commonly accepted interpretation, though, is, "We'll screw you like a Superman," as described by Paul McCartney in his biography many years from now, and in a Rolling Stone interview, too. Less common interpretations are, "Yeah, we're all looking at you, Superman, and we'll all be back here soon." If you play it forwards, It sounds like never could be any other way, which could mean that there could be no other way to continue without replacing Paul. That is, publicly. Some people who believe that that is not the real McCartney considers Lennon's song Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds to be a list of directions to McCartney's grave. Also, it's interesting to understand that the capitalized letters in the song name Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds is actually L for Lucy, S for Sky, and D for Diamonds, LSD. And Paul was under hallucinogenics when he crashed the car. All four Beatles insisted that the capitalized letters of the title were not intended to refer to LSD, and that they didn't even notice this before until it was pointed out to them. But that's so... They didn't even write the song. That's Theo O'Donnell of Tavistock. Paul's supposed writing of Fixing a Wall, which was really Theo, contains lyrics that refers to the fatal head injury in the accident. I'm fixing a hole where the rain gets in and stops my mind from wandering, which led a lot of people to conclusion that Paul's accident happened during a rain. But then in London, it rains there almost every day. Now, Paul's song that he's credited with writing, at least, is Theo O'Donnell once again. Lovely Rita contains the line, I took her home, I nearly made it, which has been interpreted as hinting to Paul's failure to reach his destination due to the crash. It's also been suggested that Lovely Rita was a hitchhiker that Paul picked up on the night of his death. Others suggest that it was she that distracted Paul when he was driving, causing him to eventually crash. The lines, nothing to do to save his life, calls his wife. That's from the song Good Morning. Good Morning. Have also caught the attention of Paula's dead believers, despite the fact that Paul wasn't married at the time. The song Within You, Without You has the lyrics, life goes on within you and without you, and what could be interpreted as the sounds of weeping near the end. And at the start of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, the reprise I'm talking about here, when Paul is counting in between 3 and 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, you can hear Lennon's voice saying, dying, just after Paul says the 3. McCartney was the third Beatle standing on the cover. That's why he said 3. Also in both Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band and its reprise track, the phrase Sgt. Pepper's Lonely is repeated several times. And if you play that backwards with the backmasking, it unmasks this. It was a fake mustache. And if you'll notice, Paul also had a mustache standing on the cover, hiding the look of the new Paul McCartney. I mean, I'm sure there was, in this 2 years that they did nothing, didn't appear, I'm sure that there was some facial surgery for the stand-in to look even more like the real Paul McCartney. But in fact, their bone shape is even different. If you check out the pictures of today's Paul McCartney and yesteryears, you'll see they're not even close in the bone structure. In the song Getting Better, when the chorus is played backwards, it sounds like, after all, Paul is dead, he lost his hair, his head. Now, Billy Shears. William Campbell. Sometimes the name is elaborated into William Shears Campbell, is a Paul McCartney lookalike. William Campbell won a Paul look-alike contest in '66 and was induced to impersonate Paul after Paul died, supposedly. Now, also on Sgt. Pepper, Billy Shears is the name of the lead singer for the fictional Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band that the Beatles were originally planning to play on the album. Though this concept was pretty much thrown out, the end of the title track includes a lyric referring to the one and only Billy Shears, played by Ringo Starr, who sings the lead vocal on the next song, which is, of course, with a little help from my friends, because if he didn't get any help from his friends, that bad drummer wouldn't go very far. All these morsels concocted together into one more or less cohesive tale that the real Paul McCartney was actually killed in a car crash on Wednesday, on November 9th, '66, replaced by Tara Brown, the socialite, heir to his father's fortune in Ireland. Now, the letters actually read OPP and not OPD, as a lot say. And many feel that, and I'm assuming this, that Brown's plastic surgery healing wasn't quite ready for public scrutiny yet. It's the Spaceman on Talk Radio, AM 640. There's more right after this. On the 50th anniversary of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album. I'm the guy to call us Spaceman. It's Talk Radio, AM 640. This is View from Space. Emails to space@640toronto.com or spaceman@640toronto.com. So, other albums that followed after Sgt. Pepper were with the new stand-in Paul McCartney, the Tara Brown wannabe rock star, a very, very high British peerage. Mother, one of the heiresses to the Guinness fortune, and the father, one of the most well-to-do Irishmen of them all, serving as an MP in the British Parliament. Now, as these albums after Sgt. Pepper start to come out, for instance, Magical Mystery Tour, all of the songs from Sgt. Pepper's on, not the same band at all, not the same writers at all. It was Theo Ordono who wrote from 1967, Sgt. Pepper starting, all the way to the end of their career. The Magical Mystery Tour. Yes, here we go again. The Magical Mystery Tour of what? The mystery religions. What else? The magic. On the Magical Mystery Tour album cover, Paul wears the costume of a walrus. But even though John is the walrus in the movie and sings the song, I Am the Walrus, the liner notes to the album read, No, You're Not, under the song title, suggesting that the walrus was someone other than John Lennon. A close examination of the Magical Mystery Tour album reveals that the third figure in the picture is wearing a pair of granny glasses, the signature glasses of John Lennon. Therefore, John was not dressed in the walrus costume. Now, the White Album, there's a song on it called Glass Onion, containing the lyric, The Walrus was Paul, identifying the walrus on the Magical Mystery Tour album cover as McCartney, the original. Some claim the depiction of a walrus is an ancient sign of death, ranging from ancient Viking to ancient Greek to ancient Inuit. But no evidence has ever been claimed. Given which animal replaces which Beatle in the music video for I Am the Walrus, it seems that the walrus is actually John Lennon, as the walrus replaces Lennon at the piano. Also, the hippopotamus, the rabbit, the bird are apparently Paul McCartney, Harrison, and Starr. And also Lennon's solo song God contains the line, "I was the walrus, but now I'm John." In a 1980 interview with Playboy magazine, Lennon actually stated at the time he was unaware that the walrus may have been a symbol of death. Now, when the cover is held up in front of a mirror, the word Beatles becomes a phone number. Yeah, actual telephone number. It's often said to be 231-7438 when held in front of a mirror, or 537-1438 when held upside down. But a lot of others are suggested also. Now, when you would dial that number when that album came out, the story goes, you would hear the message, "You're getting closer," on the other end of the telephone, receiving information about Paul's death, win a trip to his grave, or even talk to him in the afterlife. Similar to 867-5309, the numbers were frequently called by curious people who were delving into this, what I'm talking about tonight, the two Paul McCartneys, causing a lot of annoyance for their actual owners of those numbers. By the way, the number 867-5309 was a huge hit, made into a hit song in 1982 by Tommy Two-Tone. The name of the song was 867-5309. The phone number in the Beatles album. The cover. Magical Mystery Tour. The inside sleeve of the album states, "Away in the sky beyond the clouds, 4 or 5 magicians." Now, if the magicians are taken to represent the Beatles themselves, then the 5th magician would be interpreted to be, well, Paul's replacement. The 5th Beatle. Many say it's George Martin, their producer, is usually called the 5th Beatle. But in the movie, the 5 magicians are played by the Beatles and Mal Evans. Actually, the 5th magician referred to was Magic. Mal Evans, by the way, was a roadie for the Beatles when they did tour. The booklet that accompanied the album Magical Mystery Tour contained a number of scenes from the movie, too, which are suggested to contain clues about Paul McCartney's death. The first shows Paul McCartney dressed as an American sergeant with a card on his desk that says, "I was," suggesting to indicate that the man was Paul. The card is actually a British equivalent to the Uncle Sam "I Want You" poster, and says, "You was." Paul is also seated beneath a pair of crossed flags as they would appear on the grave of a military serviceman. Now, shortly after this, there was a black and white fisheye lens image of a dinner party. Now, if you hold it sideways and squint, it appears to be the image of a crushed skull. This is supposed to be the only image that does not directly appear in the movie. Now, in a scene in the middle spread, Paul is not wearing shoes, as also alluded to on the cover of the Abbey Road album. His shoes are next to Ringo's bass drum. Now, it says, "Love the 3 Beatles." The multi-exposure image of George Harrison shows a head-on car collision about to occur in the upper corner. In another page, featuring a still from the dancing scene, McCartney wears a black carnation, while the other 3 Beatles on the Magical Mystery Tour wear red ones. Paul's explanation for this was that they had run out of red ones, although he had clearly was handed a bouquet of red carnations in that very scene. Now, at the 47 to 54-second mark of Magical Mystery Tour. Underneath the lyrics, roll up for the Magical Mystery Tour. A vehicle drives from the left speaker to your right speaker. Then it crashes. This is interpreted as a reference to the fatal accident which killed Paul. There's also another instance of a vehicle driving by at the minute 35 to the minute 39 mark. There's also no crash on this second time. Now, the George Harrison track, Blue Jay Way, can be heard as a eulogy to Paul, the original Paul, with the lyrics, please don't be long, please don't be long, please don't be very, very long. Please don't be long or I may be asleep. Also, some have claimed that the song's curious about the chorus, which contains the repeated line, please don't be long. When played backward, reveals, he said, get me out. Paul is what is. Paul is Hare Krishna. It seems Pauli is bloody. Some have actually even interpreted the Paul is what is as Paul is bloody. The song actually was about George waiting for Derek Taylor to help him move to his Los Angeles home that he bought on Blue Jay Way on a foggy day in Los Angeles. Now, according to the Beatles plot, reversing Paul McCartney's song produces the words, the Mother Should Know song. Why she doesn't know me, I shed a light. Dead, it suggests. It's the Spaceman. This is Talk Radio, AM 640. With all the innuendo and all of the interpretation of the Sgt. Pepper Lonely Hearts Club Band album on its 50th anniversary. I'm going to Gotta Call Space. It's Talk Radio, AM 640. Final segment tonight's show. Covering a few things on tonight's show. One of them, right now, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Revolution number 9. Probably the most talked about clue to the death of Paul McCartney, as the real Paul McCartney died and was replaced by another wannabe during Sgt. Pepper, when the band ducked away from ever appearing again in public, never touring again. And of course, the sound that the Beatles made and their recordings after 1966, from 67 on, could never be duplicated on stage live. Could never be played. There were studio musicians, too, that were doing the licks, so how could it ever be done? It can't be, so they stopped touring. They wanted the band to sell drugs and a new lifestyle to the youth, the baby boomers. It was all part, actually the spearhead of the British invasion to transform the population of this world. As if you're a baby boomer when you were growing up. Now, Revolution number 9 is probably the most talked about, with the words number 9, number 9, number 9 on the track. Revolution number 9 became Turn Me On, Dead Man, Turn Me On, Dead Man, when played backwards, backmasking, an Aleister Crowley idea. Although a more accurate transcription of the sound would be Neon Upman. The track also includes another alleged clue, such as the sound of a car crashing, and comments by John Lennon which seem to indicate that what Paul McCartney was doing before he died. For example, one played forward-playing comment goes, "Who can tell what he was saying? His eyes was on fire." While another comment goes, "Yoko, you better go out." Other things heard backwards are the sounds of a raging fire, an ambulance arriving at an accident. This is from Revolution number 9. And the sounds of a funeral choir. Most telling, though, are the spoken words. He hit a light pole. Better go to see a surgeon. followed by the revelation that he went to see a dentist instead, implying that no surgeon was available after the accident. Amongst playing the song in reverse, in the end were two. There are now none. One of the clearer messages moving forward. Another crackling sound, representing fire, heard following the phrase, "Ooh, death," when played backwards, seems to say, Paul is doomed. And the most overt clue of them all, a man's voice, it's thought to be John Lennon's, seems to declare Paul died, to which a crowd erupts in chaos and some applause even. The shouting at the end of this song, when played backwards, sounds similar to, "Where's my Paul?" Another message suggests, when playing the comment false, as the headmaster reported the line, "I hope Paul isn't accepted to hell as a sloth or slob." And playing "Take This, My Brother, May It Serve You Well" reveals reverse the Proverbs, hinting at reversing the song to hear messages. There's another reference to the alleged time of death, considering the numbers after the songs Revolution number 1 and Revolution number 9. Considering the information already given, McCartney died on 11/9, November the 9th. Could indicate why Hey Jude's B-side version of Revolution was released again on the Past Masters album. Explaining this clue has some saying that the comment "Paul died" is actually a misinterpretation of the words "all right." Now, let me get to, after telling you about Revolution number 9 with the biggest clues, the number 9 gallery belongs to a man by the name of Sir Peter Blake. Sir Peter Blake was the man that actually came up with the cover to Sgt. Pepper and the album. He has a gallery. He's an artist, Peter Blake. He's the creator of the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album cover. On July of 2002, number 9's youngest artist, Joshua Whitehouse. Number 9 is an art gallery in England, at number 9 Brindley Place in Birmingham, England, by the way. Joshua Whitehouse, the young artist, was invited to the official opening of Millennium Point to present a very special drawing directly to Her Majesty the Queen Elizabeth II, at a VIP luncheon event at the Digbeth-based Science and Technology Center think tank. Queen Elizabeth II saw a special collection of his drawings where he depicted the monarch as Her Majesty the Bean. Millennium Point also commissioned Joshua to produce a specific drawing to mark the official opening of the building, entitled The Royal Visit. Now, the frame drawing was presented to the Queen at that event. The VIP guest at the luncheon also received copies of The Royal Visit, and Joshua's mother, Fiona, said they were very impressed with his work. She said it was really strange because the Queen left the lunch. All the dignitaries were asking for was Joshua's autograph. He really enjoyed himself, although he did not think much of the Scottish salmon and asparagus dinner. But the staff made him his favorite, chicken muggets and chips. So the staff at Millennium Point contacted Joshua through number 9, the art gallery, as they were interested in an original work to commemorate the event. The schoolboy can draw a story from his vivid imagination or a current event with uncanny clarity. He received international acclaim for this incredible, intricate drawing of the New York skyline, for instance, sketched as he was watching events unfold on television on September 11th. Oh, yeah, it figures right into this. The cover of Sgt. Pepper's was designed by the owner and mentor of Joshua Whitehouse, Peter Blake, Sir Peter Blake. And the photos were taken by Michael Cooper at Chelsea Manor, March 30th, 1967, for the Sgt. Pepper's album. Now, Peter Blake, who designed the album, said several people were intended to be included on the cover that never made it, including Elvis Presley, Adolf Hitler, and Jesus Christ. But he also said a couple of people who were included were later removed for photographic retouching. And in these pics, from alternate shots on the cover, you can still see Leo Gorcey, an American actor, made 86 movies from 1937 to 1956, I think. He died in 1969. Anyway, Leo Gorcey, who was removed because he requested a fee to have his picture on the cover of those small little faces. And you can't pick any of them out, really, unless you know who they are. And Mahatma Gandhi, also taken off the cover because EMI felt that his inclusion might offend record buyers in India. In another Sgt. Pepper's related oddity, the official version of the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album, made by EMI, the British recording company, in Southeast Asia, Malaysia, Hong Kong, was censored for 3 songs that apparently could have possibly been interpreted as being drug-related. Now, the songs that were removed were With a Little Help from My Friends, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, and A Day in the Life. They were replaced on the album with 3 songs from the Magical Mystery Tour album, Fool on the Hill, Baby You're a Rich Man, and I'm the Walrus. Peter Blake received his knighthood because of the work he did for the Beatles, believe it or not. Prince Charles actually conferred the knighthood on Peter Blake, the Prince of Wales. He was the painter best known for the cover of that Beatles Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album. Now, Blake, who also designs collages, said he was pleased to be one of only 3 living knighted painters in England at the time. He'd been painting for 50 years when they asked him to do the album, Sgt. Pepper's. He pointed out that he had done far more than the famous 67 album cover. It's the most well-known, he said, of his work, but it's also the biggest albatross because it's all people know, and they don't know anything else about his artistry. His design featured the 4 Beatles sporting handlebar mustaches, dressed in really bright colored military uniforms, and they posed in the front of a crowd of famous photographed faces, including the younger selves of Marilyn Monroe, Karl Marx, Marlon Brando, Aldous Huxley. Oh, there were so many. Born in Dartford, Connecticut, in 1932, as Peter Blake studied at Gravesend Technical College and School of Art from 1950 to 1956 at the Royal College of Art in London. And then from 1951 to 53, he served in the Royal Air Force, studied folk art, various European countries as a research award. A very, very, very well-placed member of the Royal Academy of Artists. I gotta tell you, The anniversary of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band coming out again from the 40th and now the 50th. Will there be a 60th? Yes, because this album is the most important to the Illuminati of all time. After all, the Beatles changed many lives and the way of life. It's been A View from Space on Talk Radio AM 640. Coast to Coast is next. I'm Space and I'm out.